Hello. Wow. Hello. I want to talk about a day in work and a day in life of purely commercial apprenticeship. I know I've touched on this a little bit in terms of what it is that it looks like, what it is that you do, how it is, but here's like kind of the hourly breakdown. Every job's going to be a little bit different, so this is just kind of a general outline. All right, so in the commercial world, so what I'm speaking on. If you have other things you can say in residential or kind of the service side of things, throw it down. But when you're hired on with a contractor, hopefully this is the standard at which your company works at. So your contractor hires you. Okay, great. So you show up. Here's your task. Here's your assignment. Here's what time you need to be there. Here's the job site address. You show up. Okay, so once you that initial break into, okay, I'm showing up on a construction site, you're going to have usually a bend and stretch or some type of warm up construction kind of like breakdown, which is good because stretches help prevent injuries. Anyway, so you're going to show up, you're going to have your bend and stretch, and then you usually show up as a group in your own, and the general contractor will kind of go over, okay, here's what this contractor's doing, here's what this contractor's doing. That way you have at least a know-how of what's happening in that structure of a building, depending if it's a remodel or a new build, yada, yada, yada. So once you get that kind of work layout, you're going to get together with your crew. Okay, so when you get together with your crew, usually you're going to fill out some type of safety hazard form. So that's going to kind of go over today's work on who's working where, whether you're working in confined space, whether you're working on this floor, whether you're working on overhead, whether you're working with in-wall, whether you're working with fire, whether you're working with fixture. I mean, there's just a whole slew of whatever that day and that task. So it's always going to be different, but there's stages within a job. So you'll take that portion of that job, break it down into, depending on how large your crew is, fitters, plumbers, HVAC, whatever. So your plumbing is, assigned usually by your foreman on what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be working, who you're going to be working with. And then once you get that assignment, you're going to gather, whether it be inside of the job site, you're going to get your tools, you're going to get whatever's laid out behind in front of you. So let's say I've already made that. Let's say you're going to do in-wall today because you've made it to that stage of overhead's already in. You're going to do some in-wall piping for the water system. So that water system, whether you're doing ProPress or solder, you're going to need a certain amount of tools and a certain amount of material for that project. So you're going to gather as an apprentice. Generally, you're going to start learning this. You're going to learn what it is that you need to get, learn what it is that you need to have. And so with screws, what's called hold right brackets, you need touchdowns. You're going to need probably an impact, a ladder. You're going to need a task light. You're going to need your ProPress. You're going to need copper. You're going to need fittings. You're going to need where to go. You're going to need all of your soldering stuff. You're going to need all of your hand tools. Like those are kinds of things you just start to figure out what you need to do and where you need to go and who you need to be for that task. And those are all different depending on what you're doing. So once you get that task, you're going to gather all of your stuff and your materials. You're going to lay out where is it you're going if it hasn't been done. And then once you put that work in, that's where you put the code into practice. That's where it's like, okay, well, if you're putting in urinals, if you're putting in water closets, if you're putting in automatic flush valves, what type of sizing of pipe do you need? That's already in your code. So those are things you can act upon. If it's going to be, then you got to look at submittals. You got to look at, okay, well, what are my stub outs? What are my fixtures? What are my ADA clearances? What are my bathrooms? Is it individual? Is it a group? Like those are all the kinds of things, those details, how far you have to lay out certain parts of your water system. And so then once you get that job done, you're not going to get it done in a day. Like I said, let's say entire bathroom group, that's not going to be done within a day. Are you kidding me? So in commercial, the idea is you're going to be on that crew, and then you show up, and then you start learning what it is, what those terms mean. You start learning what it means, what overhead, in-wall, waste, vent, and you're starting to apply all those kinds of procedures and codes and actual differences within each job. So sometimes, let's say, for instance, like some people want to know, what am I going to do? You don't know. I don't know what you're going to do. Like whatever job site you show up to, basically you show up, especially as your first year, you just show up and shut up, like kind of not in a mean way, but like who knows? You just do what you're told, and you are a liability. Like, I think the biggest thing I'm looking back at is like, I'm a liability because I have no idea what I'm doing, and this is serious work. People can die. I could die, and it's a serious matter when, if you don't know what you're doing with the water system, with pressures, with gases, with, what's a hazard, because I have no idea. You're showing up. I have no idea what a hazard is. I have no idea what the world of construction looks like. So, when you're showing up, especially in your first year, you're not going to be expected to know anything, which is good, and you shouldn't. Even if you have experience of, let's say you have some plumbing experience, don't say it. Just don't. Like, just show up and learn everything you can. Ask those questions. Ask those. Don't even ask questions sometimes. Just observe, and you're learning to become a hand. You're learning to become someone that can be skilled and and is called upon to know what to do when it's needed. So, like, an apprenticeship is kind of this give and take relationship where you are cheaper labor, sure, but at the same time you don't produce any type of good, I guess. Like, like, what are you producing really, as compared to a journeyman? Hopefully they are producing results, so, and productions, and in that realm you just kind of have to, like, be out of the way but always be present. I know that might sound a little bit weird, but you have to be there but also not know what you're doing, so it's kind of this weird vulnerable place. It's like, just be willing to listen, and take those commands and or orders. So it changes once you start progressing in your apprenticeship. Once you start progressing in your knowledge and your experience, you might get assigned assignments to do, whether it be on your own, whether you're going to start layout, whether you're going to start doing, you'll be given responsibility of tasks that require you to grow, or require you to get a certification, or require you to get training, like whether you want to run a forklift or a skidster, or you're going to start learning how to shoot. I mean, you could learn hand signals from how to hoist and how to do tie off, and like, there's just other types of things that require you to understand a world that has procedures and has regulations and has a, a knowledge base that we're just not, you are not exposed to. So, or say rigging certification is what I was looking for. So yeah, showing up to work is just kind of, if we go back to that timeline, is you show up, bend and stretch, you have your objective, you have your team huddle, then you have, your work set out before you, then you're gonna have your break, and you're gonna go back to that project, and you're gonna get as much as you can get done in that day, and you're gonna clean up, you're gonna sweep it up, you're gonna make that area clean, you're gonna put all your supplies back, and your material and your equipment, and you're gonna close up shop. And then maybe the next day you're going to show up and go back to that same task. So it really just kind of depends on what that job needs and where you are in those stages. And that's different from underground to in-wall to overhead to fixtures. So like, those stages change, and those require different understandings and knowledge of what to do. So what are you doing when you show up? As a first year apprentice, you are literally showing up, and you're just going to do what you're told, and you're going to try and follow those directions, and you're trying to absorb information, and you're trying to absorb what it is that you're talking about, because you probably don't know anything when it comes to certain things. So it's fine. You don't need to. We don't require. We don't expect it, but you can learn it. And that's all I got to say. Stay tuned. If you have any questions, great. And that's just me feeling like that information needs to be shared if you're making the choice to become a commercial plumber.